Why connect? Or innovate? Or engineer anything? If not to make an impact that actually matters. No matter who you are, where you are, or where you're going, Deloitte is there. And there. And even there. We are dedicated to helping people and organizations solve problems. To know faster. To grow farther. To go from red to black to green. Creating impact where it matters most.
Once again, thank you for coming. My name is Bernard Kokuavle. I'm a radio and TV journalist. This is a breakfast meeting, the Deloitte Economic Dialogue.
A warm welcome to the Deloitte Economic Dialogue, a forum where over the years we have provided insight into the economic direction for the year by having insightful conversation on the government monetary and fiscal policies.
So ladies and gentlemen, I'm painting this picture to show, where we are. And I'm careful to use facts, so that it's not, we stick to a discussion of facts because we are here, as Ghanaians. Some of the companies taking place may be painful, and we have to get strategies, particularly for making sure that debt does not become a negative legacy for the country.
I am honored to be leading the launch of the Deloitte budget analysis, a product of rigorous analysis, collaboration, and a shared commitment to fostering economic transformation.
We've seen how historically we've had challenges with some of the flagship programs that have been launched by government. And we have some recommendations about how we should implement some of these flagship programs in order to avoid the challenges we've had in the past.
So first round one, I'm going to ask everybody to tell me their general overview of the budget.
Some of the taxes that we deem as nuisance or unpopular taxes, the government tried to take these taxes off in the budget proposal.
The budget sets a tone for macroeconomic stability. And I say that because over the years, much of the challenges that we've had as an economy has been the fiscal challenges that we have been experiencing.
At least for the first time in my life in this country, nearly 17 years, you have a minister who came extensively to talk about the debt overnight.
Funding becomes a key element, and in most cases, you rely the private sector source of funding to do this, because government can only facilitate. It's the private sector that is going to do this.
On behalf of Deloitte, I extend my heartfelt appreciation to all of you for your active participation and thought-provoking contributions in today's dialogue. God bless our homeland, Ghana. God bless us all. Thank you very much and good afternoon.
This is Deloitte Ghana. By building on Deloitte's core purpose of making an impact that matters, we are a leader in professional services in Ghana. Across many Ghanaian professional services firms, our identity can be traced as far back as 1947. For the first time, here is our story. Meet some of the people who started it all. In 1939,
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah. Great. So, welcome everyone. Good morning, Deloitte colleagues and invited guests, and welcome to, I think this is the third in a series of thought leadership exercises between Deloitte and Ukgcc. Today's topic is enhancing the investment climate in Ghana, the role of transaction advisors for business expansion and growth. To kick things off, I will invite our Africa Infrastructure and Capital Projects Partner, and the leader of the Strategy, Risk and Transactions team in Ghana, Mr. Yao Apialati, to give us the welcome address. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kuku, Honorable MC for the morning. So, good morning, distinguished guests, business leaders, investors, Deloitte colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, and our honorable participants online. I'm pleased to welcome you to today's session of the Investment Readiness 101, a practical guide for business webinar series, proudly hosted by Deloitte and the UK-Ghana Chamber of Commerce. Ghana is one of West Africa's most dynamic and business-friendly economies. With a growing middle class, a vibrant entrepreneurial ecosystem, and rich natural resources, the country offers compelling opportunities for local and foreign investors. I have some statistics for you. In 2024 alone, Ghana attracted over 620 million foreign direct investments. Notably, about 140 projects were registered, with services and manufacturing sectors leading the way. And in terms of structures, Ghana is broken down into, our economy has got 3 sectorial structures: manufacturing, services, and agriculture. Over the last few years, we've seen services driving the way, and in the last year, we have about 140 projects registered with the Registrar General of Companies. And in the first half of 2025, as at the end of June, foreign direct investment increased by 382% over first half of last year, signaling investor confidence. Yet, despite this promising environment, many businesses, especially small and medium-sized enterprise, what we call SMEs, which account for over 70% of Ghana's GDP, face significant challenges in accessing capital for expansion and growth. These challenges arise from limited financial literacy, that's number one. The second issue is regulatory hurdles. Third is underutilization of technology, among others. Unlocking Ghana's full investment potential requires more than just a conducive environment. It demands expert guidance to navigate complex transaction processes and develop robust, investor-friendly business strategies. Transaction advisory services covering finance, legal, governance, and regulatory environments are required to support business navigate through these challenges. From strategy refinement, financial modeling to deal execution and post-merger integration, transaction advisors support business to navigate these complex challenges. This is the third of business dialogue that Deloitte hosts with the UK-Ghana Chamber of Commerce. So I'll give you some history. So the first one was held in April 2025, what we call the first quarter series. It was on the topic, demystifying investor expectations, what you need to know before seeking capital. And we had some very good participation online and in the room. The second, we had also a hybrid session, virtual and in-person, was on the topic, enhancing investment climate in Ghana, the role of government, where we invited regulators, government representatives in the room. Today, we are proud to have the third session, enhancing investment climate in Ghana, the role of transaction advisors for business expansion and growth. This event is part of our Investor Readiness 101 series, which brings together business leaders, investors, advisors to explore how professional transaction advisory services can accelerate growth in Ghana. We have heard some myths and maybe some facts, but some of the myths I want to share with you is that we hear businesses talk about the fact that transaction advisors are expensive. And sometimes they think that an advisor looks at your watch and tells you the time. Please, that is not the case. We've had instances where business have been overvalued. The first seminar we had, one of our speakers gave a very good example that he met a young man who walked up to him and he said he has a $4 billion business. A few years down the line, he met the man walking at a commercial bus station, walking on the roadside. He said, "It's not the guy who has a $4 billion business. What happened to your business?" He has just overvalued his business. And that $4 billion is just in his head. This is why you need transaction advisors. Let us not be thinking about cost and forget about value. A former president of Ghana once said, we should be people who know, or we should not be people who know the cost of everything and the value of nothing. Transaction advisors such as Deloitte are not expensive. We give you value for your money. We look forward to an engaging discussion on how to build investor-focused business plans, structure transactions, and harness innovative means to enhance investment outcomes. Thank you for your participation, and let's fully participate, and we look forward to a fruitful discussion. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much, Yao. A very informative presentation. And next up, we have one of our visiting Africa partners, Mohsin Khan, to give us the opening remarks.
So, good morning, distinguished guests, colleagues at Deloitte, and ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mohsin Khan. I lead our Africa strategy and transactions business, and I'm very excited to lead a team of business leaders from Deloitte Africa, comprising the following who will be on the panel today. So we have our Africa corporate finance leader, Jonathan Godden, our Africa PMI, so post-merger integration and value creation services leader, Angela Rogan, our valuation and modeling leader, Jared Mudley, and our transaction services leader, Sean McPhee. Obviously, Yao is our host and leads our Africa infrastructure and capital projects and real estate practice. And Samira Karantara is a manager in our corporate finance team and will be moderating the panel this morning. So as we begin, I invite you, focus on the indispensable role of transaction advisors in shaping the future business growth and investment. So as Yao mentioned, transaction advisors play a key role in assisting businesses, a critical role, I would say, in helping you to design compelling and effective business plan and business cases, identify and communicate their core value drivers, and structure deals that importantly maximize value while mitigating risk. We harness the data and technology to enhance transparency and inform critical decision making. So this business dialogue is dedicated to highlighting how transaction advisors serve as catalysts for business success. So we'll delve into how our expertise helps business develop strong strategies and gain practical insights essential for growth. As attendees, I believe you will walk away with actionable guidance, gaining a deeper understanding of deal structuring and valuable connections that support sustainable business development. So we look forward to your active participation, and we're happy to engage you after the event. And for those of you online, really keen to hear your questions as well for the team. Back to our MC. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great. Another round of applause for Mohsin. Thank you very much. We have next up a presentation from Dennis Brown. Dennis, yes. Dennis is an associate director with the SRT team in Ghana, and he has a presentation for us. Come on, Dennis. Yep.
All right, good morning. Just to be sure I don't cover the screen, I'm going to have to move this in a bit to the side. I hope it's fine. Okay, good morning once again. Let me use this opportunity to welcome our Africa leaders. Let me use this opportunity to welcome our Africa leaders. Understand you came in yesterday night. It's been a short while, but I hope you have enjoyed Ghana so far. And I want to promise you we are going to make you enjoy a bit more. We want to beat the Nigerians, for that matter. So hopefully we are able to do that. So as indicated by Ukgcc, my presentation is on the role of transaction advisors. I know that is what we are going to discuss with the panel later on. Hopefully I'm able to set the tone for our discussions later, where we get to dive deeper into the role of transaction advisors. Let's go back to the preceding slide. Yeah, okay, good. So just a quick one on the outline, where we'll talk about enhancing investments in Ghana, what it will take to enhance investments in Ghana. We will also look at the investment transaction process. Is going to be an overview. That is to sort of lay the foundation for us to better appreciate the role of transaction advisors, and then we will conclude. Hopefully my presentation is as short as I initially imagined it. Next slide, please. All right, enhancing investments in Ghana. So we've covered a number of points here. I think the majority of them we can argue are things that we expect government to drive or lead, but there are also a number of strategies that we think would qualify as advice to private sector players in the investment ecosystem. The first on the list has to do with upgrading of our infrastructure. I think for the locals, we all do appreciate that infrastructure is a big thing for us. There's a huge gap, and that in some instances has deterred investors, and this is something that we've been talking about for years now. It's been government traditionally that has been leading infrastructure development, but these days, or more recently, we've seen models like private-public partnership being deployed to deal with our infrastructure challenges. And so upgrading infrastructure is one of the key things we would look at for enhancing investments in Ghana. Also, based on our interaction with clients, regulatory complexities has on a few occasions deterred investors. We've spoken to investors where they've told us they started a process, they went a bit deep, and then realized they just can't deal with the current regulatory complexities, although they had sought advice, etc. And so it's one of the areas that we are looking at. That is something that government must lead to simplify, stabilize, and streamline regulations. You don't want an environment, investors don't want an environment where it's so uncertain, you don't know what's coming up in the regulatory space next time around. Also, it's important that we build local investment capacity for an economy like ours, and there are certain laws around local content that has been championed over the years, but we feel a lot more needs to be done. Especially, there's been instances where you have foreign investors bringing investments, and they are basically, working with locals that do not feel any sense of ownership. And so that creates a challenge. It's more like it's not my thing, I'm just working to be paid. And so the extent to which they take care of those investments wouldn't be the same if they are partaking, in the ownership of these investments. And that's one area we want to, advise, if you like, government and other key stakeholders on. That is important. We build local investment capacity so they can, take part in the investments. Also, to provide incentives, that's also something that we have. It can be fine-tuned a bit more. We've seen instances where investors have been giving tax breaks in certain industries, and that has encouraged more investments into that space. There are still a few industries that we think that, things like tax incentives will still drive value, and so that's an area that government can look at. And also, by way of policy, government can, look at developing a skilled workforce. In this case, not just the traditional investment in education, etc., but it should be more targeted, looking at industries that are evolving. If you look at the oil and gas in Ghana, it's still young, but it's growing. If you look at mining, it's also a key area. These are, things that we expect government to look at to tailor, the educational policy, invest in targeted education to, develop the right skills, because these are the industries that are, attracting investors, and investors would want to come in and be assured that there is, adequate, skilled workforce to work with. So that's one thing we also expect to drive investments. Promote investment opportunities. This is something that is also within the remit of government. We've seen government go to international capital market the opportunities in Ghana. This is something that we believe they can, do more. Fostering public-private partnership. I talked about it when I mentioned upgrading infrastructure. For an economy like ours, where tax revenue is that low, it's a significant bearing on the tax revenue. Government is having to shoulder all these capital-intensive projects. But we believe that if they partner with private partners and in the right model, a model that assures that they will recoup their investments with the right returns, this is an area that can help deal with some of the infrastructure issues that we have. Then another key thing we want to highlight is sensitizing SMEs to be more receptive to external investment. This is a big issue in Ghana, where owners of SME-type businesses, believe it or not, prefer maybe debt capital, even at stages where it's clear that the debt capital might sink them, just because of the desire to own it all, right? To want to be the one to catapult the business to a certain pedestal and maybe to beat their chest for it. And this is an area that Deloitte is, churning out a lot of value, working with institutions like the Ghana Venture Capital and Private Equity Association, GEFCA, to sensitize SMEs on why it is more beneficial for them to access, let's say, equity capital as against debt capital at a certain stage of their maturity life cycle. And so we believe it's early days yet. We believe in the medium to long term, this is something that is going to, boost investments. Once SMEs, because when Yao, did his presentation, he talked about SMEs contributing to the tune of about 70% to the economy. So these are the opportunities that are available in terms of investments. And so if we can get SMEs to be a bit more open and receptive to investment, external investment, that can boost investment. One other thing we've noted, particularly with the same SME type group, is the lack of investment in information management systems. So you have SME type businesses who have owners that can tell you all about the business from the beginning to where it is now, can tell you all about the industry. They seem to have a good knowledge, but very little of it, is captured in proper record keeping and, information management systems, etc. And we've seen instances where it has been a deal breaker, where you are telling the stories all right, they sound convincing, but I want something more to support it, from the perspective of the investors. And this is an area that we are also pushing with GEFCA to get SMEs to see it as, a priority area, investing in proper information management systems that to, boost investments. Then investing in research and development, we think it's very important. Very few companies have departments or teams that are, driving research and development, which is not the desirable position to be in. We believe that research and development is one area that can unearth investment opportunities, can lead to development of new products, which would create new investment opportunities. And so it's one area that we think that private sector players in particular can look at. Also, for private sector players to prioritize sustainable practices, we've seen that sustainability has become a big thing, especially over the last 5 to 10 years. A lot of the investors are not just looking at monetary profits or returns. They are also asking questions around environmental impact, social impact, governance structures, etc., which is what perhaps we all know as ESG. And so this is an area that businesses would want to focus a bit more on, make sure they invest to get it right. And the last, which you typically won't see in a presentation like this, so maybe let's say it's out of my bias, I think that we need to sensitize players in the investment ecosystem to prioritize transaction advisory support. I mean, an investment transaction is not like picking a cook from a shop. It's far more complex and, it's capital intensive for most parts. And so it's important that you seek expert advice from those that have done it and have the experience to help you. It's important. So that then leads us into the investment transaction process. This, I believe, would help us appreciate better the role of transaction advisors. So this is just an overview. I mean, typically for an investment transaction, which is to say someone has money, it could be an institution, an individual, and intends to invest in a business or project. On the side of the ones that have the money, we typically in our terminology call the buyer, and the entities or the investee entities we typically call the seller. It pretty much follows the same process where from the onset, once you have identified the opportunity, you have to strategize to see, how best to go about it. Then you prepare the transaction, and then you conduct your due diligences, which is open up the asset, try to understand adequately the risks and opportunities in the assets that you are buying or you are investing in. And once you are okay, you are good to go. There's a certain agreement in principle between you and the seller to do an agreement or to do a deal. Then you proceed to complete the transaction, which could revolve around things like drafting of legal documents, negotiation support with meeting conditions precedent, etc. The experts in the room will tell us all about it when we get into the discussions, hopefully. And it doesn't end there. For an investment life cycle, the reason why we are typically investing is to achieve a certain objective or to generate a certain outcome, even if the outcome is not monetary in nature. And so there's the whole phase where after you to ensure that the value that was envisaged is generated. And that's what we call the post-deal phase. That is also an area that transaction advisors can help with. So let's look more closely now at the role of transaction advisors. What I've done is to craft them in stages. And that's why we went through the overview of the transaction process. Hopefully, it emulates it that well to help us better appreciate the role of transaction advisors. So on the first on the list has to do with strategy and structure. So you would have identified an investment opportunity. You need to carve out the best strategy, or what I would call the most value optimizing strategy, to deliver the transaction. And there are a number of things that transaction advisors can help with in that regard. First of all, assessing and confirming a business need. Really, does the business need capital at that point in time? What type of capital does it need? What are the various sources that are available, maybe in a given market? And which of them really is suitable for the business? That initial assessment, transaction advisors are able to help with. We also talked about strategizing, so determining the most value optimizing approach or method to deliver the transaction. I've even mentioned identifying potential capital sources, etc. Transaction advisors also help you idealize the transaction process and set timelines, especially for first timers, for businesses or investors that are doing it for the first time. They'll help you, idealize the process. You'd have a good sense of what the timeline would be like, and that then gets fed into your internal plans on how you run the whole show. Then under the transaction preparation stage, where you typically have the sell side or the investee companies preparing for the transaction. Transaction advisors can help with things like business plan, information memorandum. That is key for going into the transaction, because you'd want something more concrete to show to the buyer, for the buyer to feel well informed, at least acting from an informed position about the business. Your business plan, information memorandum will typically contain all the relevant information. That's something that transaction advisors can help you with. Transaction advisors can help you, cramp up the business in numbers, as they say. So that's where you have your financial modeling and forecast. The ideas might sound good, but how does it show in terms of the numbers? If we invest X amount, how much are we going to generate over 5 years? What are going to be the returns, the cash flows, depending on what the investors are looking for as well. These are things that transaction advisors can help with. They can also help with vendor due diligences, which is the seller conducting a review of itself. And typically the benefit or the approach, let me talk about the approach. The approach is to conduct the review from the perspective of a buyer. because you are going into a transaction. So what are some of the things that a buyer will pick up if they should look at my business, if they should open my business? What are the risks and opportunities that they are going to see? If there are significant risks that needs to be dealt with, if you engage your transaction advisor early enough, you might have time to deal with some of those risks or address them. If not, at least you are well informed. You are in a position where you are not taken by surprise. You meet a buyer who has done a review of your business and is talking about things that you are completely lost about. It tells the buyer that you are not ready for the transaction, or perhaps it's high risk and they shouldn't get involved. Then, of course, business valuation, which can also be termed pricing. Just as in any investment transaction, whatever you seek to buy must be priced. And like I said, pricing the business is not like buying a homogeneous product from the shop, like mango or something, but it will require a lot of technical skills, and these are things that transaction advisors help with. Then you have transaction advisory services, this time on the buy side. So, transaction advisors play across all the stages. On the buy side, your financial and tax due diligences, these are quite core. This is whereby, from my experience, the majority of the due diligence requests sits with financial and tax due diligence, at least in this market. But sometimes we do get requests for commercial due diligence where transaction advisors are able to help you to look at the market and bottom line, to be able to size up the opportunity, that they are looking at. Operational due diligence is more internal. What are your operational structures? It could revolve around things like your HR, IT systems, internal controls, and governance, and other things relating to your internal structures. Does that point to there being, deficiencies or significant risks that might, have concerns relating to the value of the business or any other risk? These are things that transaction advisors help you with. We talked about business valuation already, so a buyer can also get a transaction advisor to help him price a deal. And then forecast review. On the sell side, we saw that typically is the investee companies that prepare their forecast. The buyer would then come in and review, try to ascertain the reasonableness of the assumptions, whether this is really, speaking to the size of the opportunity, so they can make informed decisions. Once you go through your due diligence process, and you are convinced, both yourself and the buyer, that this is a deal that you want to go ahead with, then you initiate processes to complete the transaction, which typically means to shake hands on it. And there are a number of things that transaction advisors can help you with. There's what we call completion accounts. I'm not going to explain it, it's too technical. I'm not going to explain it, especially in front of the experts that we have here. I'll leave them with the challenge. And then review of transaction documents. Here, I think the transaction documents relates to all the legal documents, sales and purchase agreement, shareholders agreement, etc., that would finally firm up whatever that you have agreed on. And negotiation support. There's a lot of negotiation support that goes into agreeing on the price. Your valuation will show a certain price scientifically or whatever they call it, but it will still be subject to negotiation at the end of the day. And this is something that transaction advisors are able to help with. I did indicate that it doesn't end with the investments life cycle, doesn't end with shaking hands, with the other party. There's a whole support that transaction advisors can provide in the post-deal phase, which is once you put in the money, that money would have to be turned over. It would have to be deployed to do what exactly was envisaged in the right way, using the right strategies, etc., to ensure it delivers the envisaged value, right? And that's what we call the post-deal integration, phase. I must say that it's not every deal that lends itself to post-deal integration issues. Typically, when it's a merger and an acquisition, that's where you'd find a lot of integration issues. But it's also possible that where you have PE investments in assets, where they need to partake in management, they need to have board representation, there might be the need to align objectives, systems, policies, etc. And these are things that transaction advisors can help with. So there are a few things here. Maybe I will just touch on some of them. Post-merger integration services, we talked about integration planning, organizational design, cultural alignment, where there are cultural differences that has to be ironed out, system integration, process harmonization, employee integration, etc. Capacity building. With the new entity, certainly may want to chart a new course. It will require some training. Transaction advisors are able to offer support, to build capacity, to ensure that the chances of success are improved. And then other operational support services, including update of various operational policies, manual, development or upgrade or acquisition of relevant software or ERP to staffing support, etc., depending on what the context is, of course. So whilst we say that not every single thing here will apply, these are things that should the situation call for it, transaction advisors are able to help with. Yeah, so I think we can conclude now. Let's go to the last slide. Yeah, so in conclusion, what are we saying? That transaction advisory support play a critical role in propelling investments and enhancing value generated from transactions. If you engage good transaction advisors, chances are they'll help you minimize the risk associated with your investments and help you maximize value. And by that, you're basically greatly improving the chances of success. This is an objective to your investment. The chances that you are going to achieve those objectives or goals can greatly be, improved with the involvement of transaction advisors. Yeah, so that's about it. I hope there are no questions for me. The questions should be reserved to the experts in the house. Don't want to go ahead of you, but yeah. Kwegu? Okay, thank you.
Big round of applause for Dennis. Thank you very, very, very much for a very, very insightful and quite educational presentation. I think Dennis mentioned this, and he said some of the three things I took from his initial slide was the need to invest in R&D, the need to invest in information systems, and the need to get transaction advisors on board. Yao also hinted to something similar when he said that transaction advisors are not expensive, they create value. This all brings to mind a popular adage, one which I'm sure we all know, that if you think education is expensive, try ignorance. This is to say that some of these decisions, like Dennis said, it's not picking up a cook from the mall. It's a complex decision that requires specialized knowledge. And you don't want to go into some of these things blind. You want a knowledgeable and well-informed partner on your side. Yeah, so thank you once again, Dennis. I think next we have Samira, who is a manager in our corporate finance team. Samira Karintara is a manager in our corporate finance team, and she will be taking us through the panel discussion. Yes, so round of applause for Samira. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning once again, everybody. I hope we have enjoyed the session so far. We are going to go into our panel discussion now. We have different advisory leaders from Deloitte who are going to take us through why it is important for us to have a transaction advisor. And we're hoping that by the end of the session, you will see the need for a transaction advisor going into any M&A transaction. So I would like to invite our panel members up first. I'll start with Jonathan. Jonathan is the Deloitte Africa Corporate Finance Leader. He specializes in mergers and acquisitions, as well as independent debt and capital service advisory for both local and international clients operating in sub-Saharan Africa. His expertise include leading sell-side, buy-side transaction advisory and capital raising. He has over 18 years experience in corporate finance and has successfully managed numerous complex local and cross-border M&A capital transactions across sectors in South Africa and throughout Africa. So Jonathan, please join us. Ghana, Botswana, Namibia, Kenya, Zimbabwe, Malawi, Zambia, and Uganda. Sean is a qualified chartered accountant and a member of the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants. He also has a Bachelor of Science degree in agricultural economics. Sean. Jared. Jared is a qualified chartered accountant in South Africa and serves as the managing partner for valuations and modeling. He leads a team of highly qualified valuations and modeling professionals located in Ghana, Kenya, Nigeria, and South Africa. Jared has extensive experience performing valuations for clients across various industries, catering to financial reporting, commercial and regulatory needs. He also advises clients on valuation matters related to both buy-side and sell-side mergers and acquisitions. Additionally, Jared spearheads the Africa Digital Initiatives and Innovation M&A service offered across the continent. Under his leadership, a team of over 50 professionals deliver high-quality, insightful, and commercially viable valuation and modeling services to some of the largest clients in Africa. Okay, so we have one more panel member who's Wendy. She'll join us shortly, but I will read out her profile. Wendy is the Africa leader for innovations and ventures at Deloitte, driven by her passion to make a significant impact in the innovation sector. Wendy focuses on cross-industry collaboration, assisting corporations in identifying growth opportunities through new product development, impact innovation, and creating new business models. Wendy focuses on cross-industry collaboration and is the Africa leader for innovation and ventures at Deloitte. Okay, so thank you all for joining us today. And we've had quite a discussion with Yao and Dennis and their presentations. But I'd like to ask, and I'll start with each and every one of you in 2 minutes, if you can tell us what exactly your role is as a transaction advisor. So we've mentioned transaction advisors. So for you on a day-to-day, what do you do as a transaction advisor? And I will start with Jonathan.
Thank you. So just to simplify it, we are a corporate finance team spread across Africa, and our main role as corporate finances is the lead advisory role. And really what I mean by that is we take a side in a process. So we're either advising the seller or we're advising the buyer. And we walk the journey right from strategic concept all the way through to deal closure with our clients. Hi, Wendy.
So, welcome, Wendy.
Yeah, so I was just asked the question, Wendy, is, what do we really do? So, we take a lead. We take an advisory role whereby we project manage the transaction from beginning to end, and we work across the various disciplines of a transaction, from valuations, managing the diligence process, working with the lawyers to consummate the deal. But most importantly, our role is to connect a willing buyer with a willing seller. So thank you.
Okay, connect a willing buyer with a willing seller.
Correct.
Okay, yes. Angela, what do you do?
So my role on transactions is very much to get into how do you make it work and how do you make the transaction happen. Is this working?
No, it doesn't.
And so on the sales side, we start very early on, sometimes even before Jonathan's team are engaged, to say, okay, we're going to carve out a business unit. We know that we want to sort of sell it. We know that there's some value in it. But how do we actually carve out that business unit? And how do we separate all the pieces that go with it? And a good example we did recently was the carve-out of Cremora from Nestle. And people here might know that the shared service center for Africa for Nestle is in Ghana. So then we had to work out how do you cut those ties with the HR function, the finance function, and create a perimeter that can be sold. And then you get your banking advisors in, and then we work with management sort of on how do you plan that out and really execute it and get to day one so that when you hand over the keys to the buyer, it's a business that's running and ready to go. And then when you take the buy side, we work closely with our clients up front. So during DD to sort of look at the synergies, what are the opportunities? is this deal actually going to work? Culturally, does it make sense? Culture's a big factor. And then develop what we call the blueprint, which then sets the framework for how the deal will go and how the integration will work. A lot of time we talk about announcement readiness. So when you sign a deal, you need to know what's going to happen with your systems, what's going to happen with your people. I don't know who's read Synergy Solution, but if you don't know what's going to happen in those areas when you sign, you're going to be struggling further down the line to achieve value through the process. So we then work with management. Once we've created the blueprint of how you're going to bring the businesses together, then the plans, so that when you actually get those keys on day one, your business is ready to run, and you get it, and you can report, and you can do everything and start realizing value quickly.
Thank you. Wendy. Wendy, what do you do on a day-to-day as a transaction advisor?
I think we're going up higher and higher up the value chain, because before all of this starts, we normally get called in.
Okay.
And our area is all about strategy on the one side, so strategy and business design. I also look after sustainability and economic advisory. And what's really exciting about that is before we even get the keys to the company, we get to go in and work with companies to understand, or how do they take cost out of their businesses, how do they take advantage of different partnerships, what do they do in the digital space, what do they do in the ecosystem space. And so what's exciting about our space is really working hand in hand with the CEO or excos of our different organizations to help them shape the next 5 years or 10 years of what they're going to do as a business. We predominantly focus across each of the different industries, and a lot of our teams have deep industry skills. To be able to advise at that level, we really need to pull on deep industry skills. So we work not only as a team at Deloitte, but we also pull on subject matter experts that might even be external to Deloitte that we bring on to help us with particular problems or particular strategies.
Okay. Sean, what do you do?
Yeah, I'd probably say from the transaction services team, we're really in the heart of the deal. So, once someone has given you the picture and said the business is worth $4 billion, we have to come and actually verify that and make sure that we understand not only the risks but also the opportunities. So really what we do is we make sure that clients understand exactly what they're buying. So I suppose an easy analogy is when you're buying a motor vehicle, I don't know if you have an auto trader in Ghana or a local equivalent, you're not going to just phone and say, I'm going to take the car. You really want to open the hood. You want to see that no one's fiddled with the odometer. You want to make sure that the tires, have decent tread on them. So that's really what a diligence is about. It's one, confirming the business case and the valuation case. Also making sure that you understand the risk, that your client can take that knowledge into the negotiation once there's price discovery. And a very important part of our work as well is that sale and purchase agreement. I think we'll hear a little bit later, deals that go wrong is because of poorly drafted sale and purchase agreements. And when you talk about cost versus value, that is really where you can lose a lot of value if you haven't interpreted the diligence findings correctly in the legal agreement and the sale and purchase agreement.
Okay. And lastly, Jared, what do you do?
Sure. So if I was to summarize it, I would say we really quantify complexity. So if you think about a business, it's a very complex thing. There's the economy, there's the industry, there's the company itself. And what our role is to take all of that information, synthesize it, build a financial model, and come up with a value of the company, which is effectively at the heart of what we do. So if I take Sean's analogy as an example, if you're looking to buy a car, you look online, you don't just buy it immediately, they'll kick the tires. What we will do is, let's say your friend comes to you and says, I want to sell you this Toyota, pay me 500 million for it. You're going to say, but hang on, if I go online, I can see these are selling for 200,000, right? So we will help you come up with what is the market value, what is the fair value for the company or the asset that you're looking at, and ultimately taking all of that complexity, distilling it, and quantifying it for our clients.
Okay. So I think I want to take us back a bit. Maybe we should have started with this. In Ghana, a lot of times we have businesses walking in, and if you ask any entrepreneur what their problem is, the number one thing is capital. It's we need money. And sometimes you realize after going into the business that it's not necessarily a capital issue that they need. They may need other things as well. So Jonathan, I would like to ask you, what are some of the key considerations a business should make before they decide to go in for capital or consider M&A?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, capital, it's the DNA, it's the balance sheet, and the strength of your balance sheet really determines how successful you can or can't be in your acquisition growth. We're talking about going to market and buying a business. Africa is challenging. The banks are fairly conservative of the level of gearing and debt they'll put into a business to allow it to potentially, say, buy another business. So what we find is if you have a strong balance sheet, that does give you flexibility. It allows you to have better options when you go out to market to potentially seek an acquisition. You're in a position of strength. You can put down a better offer. If you've got a weak balance sheet, it's the inverse. Then very much the offer you can make in the market for the asset you're looking at is very much determined by the level of gearing you can raise, which might be limited if you have already excessive gearing on your balance sheet. So it's a bit of a blend between flexibility and obviously the benefits of gearing. And I think people mustn't underestimate that gearing is a wonderful tool to use in finance to enhance your returns. But I do find in Africa, we find for growth businesses, it's equity they have to raise, unfortunately. There's very little appetite for debt. Sort of medium stage cycle businesses that can do a blend of debt and equity. And late stage, you can actually gear a business pretty well to raise acquisition finance. Africa, I do find DFIs are keen. World Bank, the likes of that come into it. Big balance sheets. Generally, the banks in Africa want strong net value underpin, so they like properties, etc., etc. So we find a balance sheet is a core tool to your M&A ambitions. If you've got a weak balance sheet, you're on the back foot to start. Strong balance sheet, you actually have more flexibility and options.
How you operate, what's your culture, what are your systems? Because the things that go wrong and mean that you don't realise the value in transactions is one, well, if you get the valuation wrong, that's clear cut, and you sort of overpay for the transaction. But then the other sort of losses in value from transactions comes from where you get the integration wrong. And that's where you don't bring the people in effectively. You don't look at the cultures. You don't understand how they come together. You don't sort of marry the business plans and ways of working. And you don't understand the sort of tech platforms. So you need to sort of, before you embark on multiple transactions, really have a clear view on what's your business plan, what's your plan for systems and tech, and how's that going to support your growth, and then how is each acquisition going to build into that?
Okay, so Wendy, we've looked at our balance sheet, we've looked at our business as a whole, and we've decided we want to go ahead with the M&A. How do transaction advisors or consultants ensure alignment between the business and the business's goals and the investor and the investor's requirements?
So I think with any of these type of deals, a lot of it goes back to is there a clear strategy that's been defined? Often we get called in because there's an aspiration in terms of what needs to take place, but a detailed strategy hasn't been defined. I think the second one where we see a lot of the challenges is around agreement at an ExCo level around what does growth mean, or where do we take the company to in the future? And so sometimes a lot of the work that we actually do is around speaking to each of the stakeholders, both internally and externally, and really getting an understanding as to what is the expectation of that company and what do they want to achieve. And when you think about growth or an innovation agenda into the future, one of the biggest challenges is actually alignment from an ExCo position around what are the steps that we're actually going to take. So a lot of the time, it's not only on helping with the strategy part, it's also around the stakeholder alignment. And when you look at possible targets or you look at possible investments, it's about really understanding, as you mentioned earlier, what is the culture of that organization and what do they want to achieve? And I'm sure Angela will touch on it later, but the culture, the alignment of the executive, and understanding of what they want to achieve, the client base that you have, and also the impact that it has on your ultimate customer is really, really important. what we were chatting about yesterday when we were in Lagos is that often one can immediately go to an inorganic play. But sometimes it's also useful to think about other engagement models that says perhaps we partner together for a while. Perhaps we look at a particular initiative together as a while. In partnership, we test the relationship, we understand what we want to achieve together, and then we can take a position as to what is that relationship going forward.
Okay, so just that's on the business front. What about on the investor front? How do transaction advisors ensure that investors are getting what they want out of any transaction?
It's key. So let's take an example. A private equity investor has a very specific returns model. So for the private equity investor, their most important thing, actually there's two most important things. The first is their exit. Can they sell this asset in 5 to 7 years' time? To understand that there is alignment between themselves and their fellow investors, in this case management, that they'll buy into the business, grow the business, and then position it for sale. So that alignment is key. If there's a mismatch in alignment, then you find there's value destruction along the way. On the other end of the scale, you have long-term, so infrastructure, which Yao works in. Infrastructure is patient, long capital. So there you need DFIs, pension funds, and the like to bring in their capital. So they're aligned with you. They understand it's going to take a number of years to realize. It's going to take a number of years to realize value, realize cash flows, and exit. So I think there has to be strong alignment between all capital providers. Otherwise, you're going to get that